Okay, y'all. I have a 13-year-old and you know this. And she is in this place, bless it. Yesterday I asked her, and we have very candid, very transparent conversations. That's like the nature of our relationship. It's actually how it's always been with all of my girls. And I don't know what it's like for most moms who have daughters that they've raised from birth. But because I adopted my girls, our relationship is one where truth has been a real foundation of it. Because of some of the things that they experienced prior to me becoming their mom. So it's really important that things are like candid and honest and all that. So what that means is as they have gone through all the paces, because I got them at 3, 11, and 14, we've been really transparent about things like sex and dating and boys and money and goals and bullying. And, when they come home, we just talk about it, right? Now, I do want to throw out a little disclaimer. I'm not a parenting expert, right? And I don't take, any sort of pretenses about that. There are a lot of really amazing, brilliant parenting experts out there, and I want you to utilize them and talk to them and research, and anything I say, if it feels right to you, look into it, check it with God, do whatever you got to do before you apply. But just sharing some of my stories so that we can talk about it, one, because you may have feedback from me, but also so we can be on the same page. So that said, it wasn't uncommon for any of my girls who talked to me if they were considering something like sex. That was like when they were thinking about that, that was something we talked about. When they were thinking about their first guys that they wanted to date, we talked about it. When they had, interactions with friends at school where those friends were talking about their sexuality or bullying or who they're dating. I mean, I am up on the T for what is going on in middle school, high school. Like if it is happening, my kids talk to me about it. And when I tell you how grateful I am that we fostered that relationship, it's the thing I'm most proud of. Now, I'm not so naive as to think that my girls tell me everything. Frankly, I appreciate it, right? There are things that my kids will never know about me. There are things that I won't know about my mom. And there are things that, my girls will hold, for themselves, and they should. That's appropriate. But we're fostering that with my 13-year-old now as she's entering that season of life. So the other day, I asked her, she said it was kind of random, like a jump scare. I was like, "Are any of your friends having sex?" And I just asked her this, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, mom." Which, first of all, to all the mamas listening right now, good and well that that is exactly the response we want. Please be grossed out. Please be like, "What are you saying to me?" Because that means I'm still in the good. Because there will come a time where she will respond and say, "Oh, girl, all of them." Like, that will happen, unfortunately, right? I live in LA, we live in America, like, it is the real of it, right? But right now, I'm still getting the ill gross, and my daughter's very, Allie, my 13-year-old, is very reflective, so she, was like, no, none of them are," and then we kinda left it at that, and I said to her, I was like, "Well, if any of them are, if you have any questions about it," because we've talked about sex like it's, a thing we've talked about, but, I said to her, I said, if it comes up, just know that we can talk about it if you have any questions." She's like, "Yeah, no, I know that." And I was like, "Okay, girl." And we left it alone. Well, she brought it back up again about 2 days later, which is not uncommon for her. Usually if something happens, whether it is like a bullying situation or something with the family or something that, she sees on TV or learns about in school, whatever, she kinda will bring it up, then marinate, then bring it back up again. So she brings it up and she says, Mom, remember how you asked me that thing about, are my friends having sex?" And I said, "Yeah, we talked about it." I was like, "Did you just like think of someone or whatever?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, but no." She was like, "Some of my friends are having sex." And I was like, "Oh?" I was like, "Tell me more about that." And if you are listening to this for the first time, just said, "Tell me more about that," is like my go-to phrase with my kids, "Tell me more about that." And she says, "Yeah, like some of my friends like in high school are, and she goes to a private school, so like all the kids are kind of in a grouping. It's a small school. And I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "What grade?" And she was like, "Something like 14-year-olds and 16-year-olds." And here's where I just want to say Botox really comes in handy, parenting, because when your face is frozen, you can't react the way you really feel. Okay. Cause that's where I was. I was like, this teenager is out here talking to me about 14-year-olds getting it in high school, and I want to give her all the faces. The inner African mom in me wanted to be like, who? Who is raising these children, huh? What are these? They are children themselves, and they are out here doing things to make children," right? Like, that was the energy, but, I scaled it back. I scaled it back. I was like, "Oh?" I was like, "Do you like, are these close friends, or how do you feel about that? Tell me more about that." She's like, "Yeah, like, I think it's crazy." Like, she was like, "I see what it's like, having a baby around here." And I'm like, Are they ready for that?" And I was like, "Good, good." I was like, "Not your little sister being some birth control. We receive it, Lord." Like, I love that, right? So, we have a little chat about it, and, very quickly, the conversation evolved into, how are you choosing the right partner? So, I don't know about y'all, but whether you've got sons or you've got daughters, this is something that I am finding is a conversation I wish I had with my mom. It's a conversation that I wish more moms were having with their sons, because so many of us are finding ourselves, one, we know what the divorce rate looks like, right? Like, people get married, and usually by the, 7-year mark or sooner, they've got a divorce under their belt, and understand that, as someone who's gone through divorce themselves, I am not judging this. Please do not stay in relationships that are not the one you wanna be in. Don't make babies in those relationships if you can avoid it, because it's a complication, right? Like, I am not encouraging anyone to stay where they don't want to be. Our society, at the same time that there are so many people with divorces under their belt, seriously, you probably know people who have been married for, like, 25 years, and you don't even know that they have a divorce under their belt, right? It is that common. We also have a society that really condemns, women particular, for getting divorced or changing their relationship or not being with someone, that they don't wanna be with anymore, as if we are compelled to be in a relationship we don't want to be in. What type of messaging is that? Right? So, in telling my daughters about picking a new partner and, figuring out who the right person is, I share a lot of my own story, with what's appropriate, of how I was married really young. Like, I made that decision at 21, 22 that I was going to be married. And that I picked my partner and all that. And now that my girls are reaching that age of, my older ones, my 13, my 23 this year, and 26-year-old this year, all of them are really, it's sending home. They're like, wait a second. At this age, you were married. At this age, you thought you had the good sense to pick somebody to be with for eternity. And they're looking at me crazy, these kids. They're like, no, mom, I can barely figure out what I want for lunch, right? Like, and you were out here committing for life. And I was like, listen, I really thought I knew. I really thought I knew. And so that's some of the conversation. They were like, yeah, so like what made you think you knew? And we were chatting about this morning. This is why I'm coming in and talking to you guys about this today. Was, have you heard the phrase, if he wanted to, he would? It's like it's something that people say, it's kind of a catchphrase where they're like, "Yeah, like," they comment after they see some guy making a big overture for a woman where, he's, I don't know, planning the perfect breakfast or being like a super dad or, flying her across the country or doing all these very visual things on TikTok, and then people will comment and be like, "See, if he wanted to, he would." Right? Like, if he really wanted to do it, he would make the effort. I just wanna add to that, right? Because the thing that I think is so important and that I, try to share with my girls is that anyone that I've ever dated that I am no longer with is exactly who they said they were. Like, the reason why I am not in a relationship with a lot of these people is because they didn't change, right? Not because they drastically were different than the day that I met them. It's because of the fact that, yes, obviously, like with any relationship, there were inflection points, right? So, even if someone is pretty consistently of a certain behavior or a certain, mannerism, there might be inflection points where, like, you see sort of the worst of that behavior, or where circumstances, whether it's like sickness or illness or income or whatever, will cause you to really see certain behaviors amplified. That is normal and par for the course in marriage. You just hope that that amplification is a positive one. Like right now, like for instance with my current husband Alex, you know pregnancy caused an amplification of behavior in him. I was able to see more of how he is a caring person, how he is a caregiver, how he is thoughtful, how he is considerate. That's who he was when I met him, but I saw an amplification of that behavior. Just like, because both sides of it, right? Nothing is missing. You know, when he is under high stress, I can also see an amplification of his stress related behaviors. He will go extra hard. He'll be more neglectful of himself, in terms of, eating. And he's just like, I got to get out of the door. I mean, just the other day, he was working in the studio and it was like 9 p.m. and he calls me and he's like, I did not eat today, like from that morning. And he was like, I feel faint. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing? But it's that I was like, are you stressed? And he was like, yeah, I just want to make sure I'm like doing my best work, blah, blah, blah. So I try to tell my girls that whoever you meet, right? Whoever you meet is who you're going to marry. What's the saying? Who you marry is who you bury, right? Like that, what you got is what you got. So this idea that I don't know, and maybe y'all can, send me DMs, send me messages. I'm on Threads. I'm very active on Threads. Nicole Walters is very spicy on Threads. So if you want to get over to Threads, you will find me there saying exactly what I feel in a few characters. So you can find me on Threads under Nicole Walters, but I don't know where it comes from that we seem to think that we can like change a man, or if we're with someone for a while, we're going to see a difference in behavior, or if we have enough struggles, we're going to get through it. I feel like it's a romantic concept from like TV or movies or the media. I don't know. Because it doesn't make sense, because we also remember our ancestors and the elders saying to us very consistently, you can't change a man, right? Like it's not a thing. So why are we out here still doing it? Case in point, I will use myself. When I met one of my exes, they told me right out of the gate from the jump, I am not a thoughtful person. Like they were very clear about it. They're like, I'm not thoughtful. I'm not romantic. It is not my nature. I am not someone who is, naturally considerate. It's just not who I am. I like those things. I think they're great. I am a romantic in terms of being dreamy and philosophical conceptually. But when it comes to thinking of others, that is not my nature. Y'all, why was I like, bet I love a challenge? What about my traumatic background said, oh, a man's telling me he is not thoughtful. He is telling me exactly who he is. And I was like, you know what I need to do? I need to commit to you. I need to commit to you, because if you get enough experience, enough opportunities with me, if we take on the world, y'all, I can actively remember, and praise God, I am not in this relationship. Oh Lord, praise God. I can actively remember being in my brain saying, he will feel differently when he sees like the value, the opportunity. If I can just get him to see how great it is to live this lifestyle, if I can just get him to find his purpose and his passion, if I can just get him to see how worthy our life can be together, then he'll want to do these things, right? But ladies, remember, if he wanted to, he would, right? If he wanted to, he would. If he wants to become that thing, he himself will decide to become that thing independent of you. And that lesson I have not learned until my current marriage. It's embarrassing, not embarrassing enough that I'm not talking about it right now today, but it is embarrassing that I have reached my grown, big 40-year-old age. And I am just now realizing that, oh, this is what it looks like when a man wants to become better, because he is incentivized, maybe inspired by what he is with. But I am not, if anything, I'm the spark that might have ignited the change, but you better believe I'm not the fuel to the fire. I'm not keeping it going. That has to come from within. And that is what I'm experiencing now. I have been in relationships with people for years who I literally thought that if it was just and I say this hoping that it lands with some of you where you are right now, if you are in this relationship. And it doesn't just have to be a romantic partner. It can be a friend, a coworker. I had a speaking gig the other day where, one of the Q&As at the end of it was, how do I finally get that promotion? I've been with this company for 20 plus years, and I'm just not seeing the acceleration and respect of my role. And it always feels like it's a different day or next year or another, goal that we hit or another financial outcome. And it's just not happening. And I looked him in the face and I said, girl, you need to leave. And this was a grown 60-plus-year-old woman. I said, it is time for you to go. They do not respect you. They are changing and moving the goalpost, saying, next time. And you're hoping that your job will change, but you need to change your job. And the same thing applies. You're hoping your man will change and you need to change your man, and it blew my mind because I was like, it took me so long to realize that. And, I'm sure Alex won't mind, even if he does what, I'm out here telling his business. He loves me. My man's gonna stay with me anyway. So I'm gonna tell you, here's what happened. I know for a fact that the man I am married to is not the man that his ex-girlfriends got. And I don't say that as a flex. Maybe it's a tiny flex, right? It's a tiny flex because that credit score is looking very strong. It's a tiny flex. But I will tell you, I know for a fact that his ex girlfriends did not meet the man that I have today. Right. There's change that happened within him that I see every single day because I hear about it. I hear about it from his friends. He has friends that are like friendships that are like 30 years deep. Okay. That he has known for a long time. I hear about it from his mom. Like, I love his mom, and his mom will say outright, like, not even say outright. Honestly, I can see it in Sis's face. She'll really look at me like, wow, like, okay. Like, I can see that they see the growth in him. And a lot of that comes from the fact that, when we met, and I can't even believe how long we've been together now. It's been, honestly, we've been together for almost half the time I was married. Like, it's just like time is ticking, and that Botox makes me look the same. Amen, amen. But I will tell you, with him, when we met, he had just started saying, there were a couple of habits that he was like, I'm no longer going to do this, like, I'm no longer going to stay on the party scene. I'm looking to commit myself. These were things that he'd already said for himself. We met at the top of the year. So he'd already started down this path. This is what I mean. And this is actually what I shared with my girls. And this is what I'm sharing with you. And if you want to grab some of this and share it with your kiddos too, whatever you want to do. But the change was already happening. So I found a partner that it was already making these decisions for reasons that they wanted, meaning they'd already started the business, right? They'd already started to grow within personal development. They'd already started the workout plan. They'd already started eating better. They were already doing this thing and personally incentivized to be the person that I wanted to be with. And I was smart. It's kind of like getting in early on an investment, right? I wanted to get in on the ground floor of a business that I knew was going to boom. And that is literally what my husband is. Like, when I met him, he was already making these changes, but he'll tell you, he'll be quick to say, when he met me, he was like, not only am I committing to these lifestyle changes, but what else can I do? Because I'm not going to mess this up, and that's the difference. He didn't look me in the face. Oh, why is this making me teary? I don't know. Maybe it's the hormones. I don't know, because still sis is still out here, take care of this baby. But when he looked at me, he said, not that he couldn't be certain things or he wasn't certain things or that's just not who I am. He looked at me and said, I will do whatever is required, and then proceeded to do it. I think of our first Valentine's Day because we met top of the year, we were already dating each other with the intention to marry, pretty quickly on because, my old school Christian folk understand it, dating with the intention to marry. But for those of you guys who don't know it, it's basically when you meet somebody and you say, like, this isn't games. You know what I mean? Like, I'm dating you not just to kind of see and figure it out, but I'm dating you ongoing. And so that happened, pretty quickly where we were like, okay, we're committed. Let's see where this goes because we think this could be something. And what was tough for me though was Valentine's Day was coming soon. And I remember thinking to myself, I'd convinced myself because of previous relationships, because this is one of the byproducts of being with someone who, your thinking is going to change to match what you want. You start changing what you actually want. People don't talk about that, and so I, for the longest time, was like, I don't care about holidays. I don't care about Valentine's Day. I don't care about Christmas. Like, I will throw that for everyone else because they care about it, right? I'll put up the tree. I'll do the event for my girls. I would always do Valentine's Day baskets because ain't nobody's dusty son giving them a half a carnation and then having them be like, oh, I'm in love. No, no, no. My mom got me a dozen roses at home. Step up your game, son. Right? Like, that was how I always did it for my daughters, right? So it was nuts because I would do this and I would pour on other people, but I would then tell myself, oh, I don't even like flowers because they just die. What is even the point? That's such a waste of money. I like to be fiscally, get me stocks. I don't even need, this stuff. Like, I don't want that, right? Like, that Christmas, I would watch everyone else open their gifts and no one got me anything, and I would do that for decades. And I would just say it doesn't matter because my joy is in watching everyone else get their things. That's a lie. I like stuff too. You know what I mean? Like, I like to open, a girl likes to open a present. I want to get a paper cut from gift wrapping. Like, I also want to participate, and the idea that I just because I knew no gift was coming, I would just convince myself that I never wanted anything was a whole lie. And so being in this new relationship, I leaned into my habits of, oh, I'm not going to ask too much. I'm not going to want too much. I don't even care if I need these things. And I'll just kind of take what they're willing to give. And fortunately, I was with someone who gave a lot, right? But I was leaning into my old self instead of saying, no, these are things that matter to me. And I'm so fortunate. I mentioned to, Alex early on, oh, I'd never really had a Valentine's Day. And he looked at me shocked. He was like, but weren't you married, girl? And I was like, yeah, I was, and he's like, yeah. Actually, at the time, being transparent, I was like, I am, right? Because that divorce was not final, and he was like, which that's a conversation for another day. People are always like, what about your timeline? You can share, like, how did you jump into it? I'll do a whole episode about the timeline, which we've talked about it before. It's not something I've kept a secret. I've talked about it with Alex, whatever. But a lot of people think that healing is linear and that you are going to decide you want a divorce and have that divorce and then suddenly fall in love again and then have a certain amount of time of healing. We're like, that's not how that works. You know what I mean? That's not my divorce took 4 flipping years. Okay. As fine as I am, you thought I just stayed on the market? Please. Please. Okay. My man was like, the minute that ink is dry and that paper is signed, I am snatching you up because he's a smart man and you're a beautiful woman. So understand that if there's someone out there who wants you, you don't need to wait for that ink to be dry. My divorce was finalized in heaven before it was finalized on earth. Okay. And I was ready. But that said, Valentine's Day rolled around and felt all this pressure because I was like, no, I do not want I do not want to have hopes that this new guy is going to do something because what if I lose it, blah, blah, blah. When he found out that I'd never had a Valentine's Day, he was like, that's crazy. He woke me up with matcha pancakes that he drove from across, which also matcha, listen, it tastes like dirt to me. I don't even like it, but it was early in the relationship, so I pretended I liked it. So he went and drove these matcha pancakes if you're familiar with LA, from the Valley to Marina, okay? That is like, I mean, it's giving like Moses parting the seas energy. Okay. I was very excited about this. So he brings me pancakes. And then after he brings me the pancakes, he's also like, I got stuff planned for us later tonight. There were little gifts. He had like a florist hookup because, the coins wasn't coining the way I wish they had coined then. So he called a friend, got a little bouquet together. Valentine's Day, the upcharge on the flowers. So he like huge bouquet on the bouquet. He wrote, because you deserve, which was such a meaningful note because he used to hear me say it all the time. You deserve is something I say instead of you're welcome. When people say like, thank you, I'm like, you deserve, because people don't hear that enough. Like you're deserving, of goodness and kindness and you don't have to do anything for it. So for him to do that and listen to that and put that energy back towards me, like, I know some of y'all right now are like, see, if he wanted to, he would. Exactly though. Do you get what I'm getting at? I didn't ask for none of it. This is his baseline character, right? But also catch this. This is not who he was with all his girlfriends, okay? Because if he wanted to, he would. I know good and well that with some of his previous relationships, this was not the energy or effort that these women got. And they were doing, and this does not speak to those women. I just want to be clear. I am not bashing his previous girlfriends because his previous girlfriends, and he will be the first to say it, were all good people. Like, and that's what I love about him, his character. They were all good people. They just weren't his person, and I think a lot of times we're sitting here, trying to mold ourselves to either show that we're a good enough person, that this partner will see us as their person. And sometimes the two don't come together. And that's what I kept harping and sending home with my daughters. It's like, look, I want you to understand that when you find your person, it doesn't have to be that hard. You don't have to sit here and bend over backwards because one, you won't feel resentful. You will have a desire to be and do and go the extra length for that person. There are times, real talk, where I am tired when my husband gets home from the studio. I am exhausted. I am sleepy. I worked a full day and I'm just barely staying up so I can see his face before I go to bed because I know we're going to be up and at it the next morning. And y'all, when he calls me and says, hey, I'm on my way home, I will find myself summoning up the energy. I don't know where it comes from. Holy Spirit, I don't know, to get up and make this man a plate. So because I know he's tired too, but I'm like, no, when he gets in, I want to make sure that he has food that he's able to eat so that he can just put his stuff down, sit down, and the meal is ready, and I'm tired, but I also know that he is tired. And if I have just a little bit of energy, I know that if he only has, it makes me teary because it's so true. Like, I know that he will give me his last. So it's so easy for me to take my last and also bring that to the table. And I desire to do that for him. And I know he desires to do it for me. And there is nothing that, like, I have changed in this relationship because of him, because the place from which I'm giving my last is different. I always gave my last. That's just my character. I give my all to everything, but the place from which I'm giving it is not one of hoping that my partner will eventually desire to give me something, to give me anything, to show up. It's for me doing it in a place because I know I'm being met with that energy. And if for some reason I'm on zero, I can always pull from his bank because he will give me what he's got. And so in showing my girls this, because again, in this relationship, my girls are also witnessing me being loved well. They have witnessed, my husband rubbing my feet. They have witnessed my husband getting up off the couch when I could have gotten up off the couch to do something. He will literally walk across the room to grab something that's a foot away. You know what I mean? Because I feel like it. You know what I mean? Like, my girls are getting the visual example massaged into their brain of if he wanted to, he would, but they're also getting the example of I'm not having to bend over backwards to make my man into, so I'm not raising myself a good husband. So I know some of y'all right now paused on that and said, "Wait a minute." You know? It's real. It's real, and if they're not getting that messaging at home, if that's not some messaging that you received at home, understand that it's necessary because that is not what society is giving us. Society is telling us that if a man meets the right woman, he suddenly becomes a whole different being, but that whole change needs to happen before he even meets the right woman. All we are is the fuel, or not the fuel. All we are is the spark, hopefully, to ignite that behavior, but we shouldn't be the constant fuel where we're giving of ourselves to keep that fire burning. And I've just been really excited to have these conversations with my girls, even though, obviously they give me the anxiety and the stress, talking about the sex, talking about the relationships, having a teenager, also while having a newborn and knowing I'm gonna have to do it all over again, isn't how I'd like to spend all of my days. But knowing that I have a chance to help them get it right the first time and, pick a partner that not only nurtures and helps them grow, but that they also help nurture and grow without losing themselves or giving too much is everything. So, whether you're raising daughters or you're raising sons, just know that teaching them that they're good enough the day they show up is going to be everything because they're going to lend themselves to someone rather than losing themselves in someone.